what is postmodernism current of thought, and how have they become the protagonists, in my opinion, of the downfall of Western society and denial of the basic principles of human progress?
Yeah, well, that's a fun and complicated and actually sometimes frustrating story to talk about. So we see many of the manifestations around us culturally, and they're disturbing because most of us have a sense of the world has problems, but we've made great progress, that people can be civil, we can work out our disagreements in the marketplace or if necessary in courts, that there really is such a thing as justice and fair play, and that we should be able to solve problems and make the world a better place. And postmodernism is a deeply cynical rejection of all of that. But how that came about and why we're seeing so many manifestations of it in the last 10 years or so is the thing at work. Or the thing at question, rather. The idea here is that big cultural movements typically are incubated for a long time among thought leaders. And in our case, in our culture, for the last 200 years, we have prized mass education. And so we have developed a huge intellectual class of people who can devote their lives to ideas and argumentation and so forth. And what then has been happening is that the intellectual class, to a significant extent, has become skeptical, has become pessimistic, and has become nihilistic. Many times for more theoretical reasons within ideological systems or within philosophical systems. What then happens is that once a significant number of intellectuals come to believe that, they then train students, graduate students, who go on to become lawyers and history teachers and journalists, and they become the next generation's politicians. And then you start to see the effect of that in politics. So if, for example, you see now, mass movements of people who want to say, we shouldn't treat individuals with respect, with civility, with due process. Instead, we should just see individuals as members of these groups. And these groups hate each other and are just in this power struggle. And there is no such thing as fairness and justice. And everything is cynical in the courts, in politics, and in journalism. Well, those mass movements involving hundreds of thousands of people don't just come from nowhere. Mm-hmm. Instead, those hundreds of thousands of people typically are university-educated people who've learned a new philosophy, a different philosophy that is very cynical. And that philosophy is what I call postmodernism. I call it postmodernism because it sees itself as rejecting modernism and trying to say that we need to go beyond that. But those ideas that most of us still buy into, that we are individuals, that we should have freedoms, that we should have certain rights, that yes, we're going to have differences and disagreements, but as reasonable people, we should be able to talk about our differences. And sometimes we're going to agree to disagree, and we're just going to have to be tolerant, right? And so on. If we can't just agree to disagree, well, then we're going to take things to the courts, and the courts will, by and large, come up with kind of impartial justice. So if we buy into that framework, that's the modernist framework. And it itself took a long time to develop and become the mass framework as well. But the postmoderns have rejected all of the fundamentals of it and want us to take us in a different direction. So that's a quick 2-minute overview of the very big question.